Welcome to another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast. Dr. Bill Kanasky. This podcast is brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. My guest today, my colleague, very close colleague, and someone I absolutely love working with, Ava Hernandez. Ava, how are you?
I'm well, Bill. How are you?
I woke up bitter. I woke up bitter.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going right into my, and before just so people don't just click off at this point, because they know what I do. We're going to be, our topic today is really, really important. And again, whether you're a defense attorney or a plaintiff attorney, this is a really, really important topic. And that's the topic about witness mental health and how it can really derail their testimony. And we've seen it in more cases than not. And because of our backgrounds in psychology, we're able to detect it and able to, I think, prevent it from derailing a deposition or trial testimony. So we're going to focus on that today to share our experiences and give attorneys, again, whether they're defense or plaintiff attorneys, it really doesn't matter. You have clients and your clients have to testify. And if they have mental barriers, emotional barriers to testifying, it's going to screw up their testimony. Now, before I get into that, let me just tell you why I woke up angry. And this has been a persistent waking up angry lately. And I've talked about this at least once on a different podcast. So I'm dying to get your views, Ava. This tipping thing is out of control.
Tipping?
It's out of control.
Yeah.
I'm at the airport. I'm at the airport. It was actually O'Hare, right in your neck of the woods. By the way, I'm wearing my Wrigley Field.
I see that.
Cubs on fire right now, post All-Star break, and I'm going to a game next week at Wrigley, so I can't wait.
Oh, nice.
So I'm in the airport, and I'm going to one of the stores in the airport, right? What do they sell? Well, they sell a bunch of snacks. They have their waters, Gatorade, Monster drink, all that stuff, magazines, whatever. And then I go to the checkout counter, and what do I have? I have a bottle. I have a bottle of water and protein. That's like my standard operating procedure. Bottle of water, protein bar.
Right.
And I get up there, and she's like, it's $10.50 or whatever it is. And I'm telling you, there's a jar next to the right where I'm checking out my credit card that says tips appreciated, and there's money in the jar.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's absurd.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's absurd. But let me give you a more let's make this more realistic. And I want your opinion. If we differ on this opinion, there's nothing wrong with it, even though I'm always right. But let me throw it out there. Okay. You go to a coffee shop. And you just get a coffee. The only thing, you walk up to the counter and you just order a coffee. They say $4.55, whatever it is. And then you insert your card or whatever. And then up on the screen, what's the first thing that comes up? Tip amount. And it says no tip, 15%, 20%, 25%, something like that. Right? Now, just for a cup of coffee in that situation, the only thing they're doing is turning around, pouring the coffee, giving it right to you. Do you tip?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, Bill. I do. I usually choose that like $1 option, and I do it. I'm with you though that the tipping culture here it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
I do not tip in that situation. I refuse to tip in that situation. And so I did this the other day, and they can see what's going on. And I hit no tip. And the look on her face was like appalled. But I'm thinking, why, if you want to make more money, why should I, the customer, be subsidizing that?
No.
Ask for a raise, or have Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever it is pay you more money. Why should that go through me? Now, if it's table service, I always tip, and I adjust that tip based on the experience. But just pour me a cup of coffee. I'm sorry, I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not doing it. And by the way, can you talk about the psychological pressure?
So much. Yeah, someone's staring right at you. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. It's just it's out of control. And I know you can talk about economy, recession, minimum wage.
Sure.
It's as the customer. It's not my problem. Don't push it on me, Starbucks. Dunkin', don't push it on me. to give your employee more money, give them more money.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly. That's
And the tipping was designed, by the way, the tipping was designed because there's laws for servers, for waitresses, waiters, because by law, they only get paid $2.50 an hour because the majority of their income is coming from tips, right?
Right.
But now you get somebody at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, they're not making $2.50. Yet they still want the tip. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. It's become a cultural thing at this point that's kind of gone all out of whack, you know.
Now, what I would recommend that you take your time as you pay so they don't spit it like a big loogie in your coffee, right? Right? You want
probably wise. Yeah,
you want to get the coffee first, right? And there's the other thing. Like if you go to Starbucks, they want you to tip before you even get the product. What's up with that? It's like, well, wait a second. So I want to pay for it. Then you want me to tip you. Well, what if it's a shitty product at the end? I've already tipped.
Yep.
The tipping's supposed to be for the experience, the service, and I'm pre-tipping. It's called pre-tipping. Like they pre-board on the plane. Don't get me started on that. It's pre-tipping. Okay, see, this is just out of control. But that's my rant for the day. Speaking of mental health, because mine has just been off the rails. So yeah, we both have experience in clinical psychology, and we work in litigation. And a lot of I get the question a lot from attorneys, like, how did you get into this, right? Everybody has their story, but you and I well know that half of our job, well, the other half is exploring jury decision making scientifically, and gathering data, analyzing that data, and telling our clients what their case is really about from the jury level, both from a liability standpoint and damages standpoint. But the other half, 50% of our job is training witnesses to testify, both in deposition and trial. And of those, it's mostly deposition, so because not a lot of cases go to trial. It's a lot of deposition training. And what I have found in 20 years of doing this, and I think one of the things that makes me so effective at this job, is that mental issues, right, play a huge role in the quality of the testimony. And many of these witnesses come into the litigation, and we can kind of talk about the spectrum of what we see. Every witness, 95% of the witnesses come in with some sort of, it's a lawsuit. I'm getting sued. I'm going to be deposed, right? And they have testified. So at the minimum, we're seeing elevated anxiety,
right,
nervousness, fear, and all of those can interrupt cognition, right? So number one thing that interrupts cognition and can spoil that testimony. But you and I have also seen some much deeper things. We've seen undiagnosed mood disorders, depression, many witnesses with PTSD. Look at the trucking the trucking industry, and we work with truck drivers to prepare them. Well, they've been in a terrible accident, oftentimes with catastrophic injury or death, or maybe they've even been hurt themselves.
Right.
That's a huge mental burden. And what I see in the litigation process are defense attorneys, and I'm sure plaintiff attorneys, that don't really see that or are able to appreciate it. Attorneys, it's not your fault.
Yes.
Unless you have a degree in psychology, I would not expect you to pick up on these things, right? Or if you do pick up on them, you're like, yeah, everybody's nervous going into depo. No, it can get a lot more deep than that. Ava, can you talk about again? We'll kind of start generally, and we'll get more specific. Your experience with witnesses and some of the things that you see that oftentimes the trial attorney does not see for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think, what you just said, Bill, about the spectrum of things that we see, I think is spot on, because that's exactly what it is. There's sort of the inherent anxiety and stress that exists for pretty much anybody going into this process, right? Unless you're intimately familiar with the legal system, it's pretty freaking stressful to get a subpoena and have to show up, to testify. right? Or even be a party to a case and all the stress that comes alongside of that, being named in a lawsuit, right? So we see an awful lot of that, and that can manifest in a lot of different ways. I mean, I think it could be a little bit easier for all of us in general, and certainly attorneys, to recognize stress in certain people over others. I think a lot of times what I'll see is, especially in the trucking industry, you get these, these men who've been on the road for a long time, that are tough, right? And there's a different way that their stress levels will manifest. And so sometimes I hear attorneys say, "Oh, he's fine." And then after talking with an individual for a little while, I go, "No, he's not fine, right?
Yeah.
He's just not acting stressed out in a way that you typically recognize, right? So you kind of push it to the side." So I see that a lot, where it's, "Oh, this individual's doing great," right? But after a little bit of rapport building, after spending some time with them, you realize there's something a little bit deeper there that we just haven't gotten a chance to uncover in the litigation process, because it doesn't really make space or room for the kind of mental health issues that tend to come up.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit to, because we see this all the time. And the reason why that erroneous assessment gets made is the attorney says, "Yeah, I talked to them on the phone the other day. They're great." Okay. Once you get them out of that truck, or you get the nurse out of the hospital, right? Or the doctor out of surgery, or the business owner out of the corner office, and you bring them into the law firm and they put their phone away, and now they're really forced to 100% process what's going on. Okay. Can you talk about how witness, and by the way, this is a common defense mechanism, and we all do it, is they take any stress, anxiety, depression, guilt, whatever it is, and boy, they bury it. They bury it just because they want to get by. They have families, they have friends, they have jobs. They're not thinking about this stuff 24/7. And they bury it, they suppress it. And then when they come into the legal environment, we force them to bring it up. Can you talk a little bit about how witnesses do that and why they do that? And on one hand, it is a healthy defense mechanism, so you're not a lunatic all day. Hey,
Right.
litigation's a long time. What if you're a lunatic all day just thinking about this, right? But then how that can actually hurt you in the witness prep?
Yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely it is perfectly normal, and everybody does it, right? All this
Everybody.
stuff is coming at us. I don't want to have to deal with it. There's too much to deal with. We're all human. We can only take so much, right? So, of course, all these stressors that are kind of sitting in our face, we're going to want to dumb that down a little bit, minimize it, not have to look at it all the time, right? We don't want to process it necessarily, have to put it on the table, acknowledge what's going on, I always tell people, when I'm working with witnesses, I say, "Hey, listen, we can't change the situation, right? Let's at least put it on the table so we can look at it clearly. Let's manage what's in front of us. Let's at least acknowledge what's in front of us, and then we can deal with it. Because until we've kind of gathered everything up into a pile, we don't even really know what we're working with." Right. And so, of course, people in general and witnesses stuck in a stressful situation don't want to have to deal with this. And I think sometimes witnesses also feel kind of an implicit, sometimes maybe even explicit pressure from the litigation team and from kind of being involved in that process to put on a happy face and to act like they're kind of okay and capable of managing everything that's going on. In general, who wants to kind of admit to the fact that they're having a tough time, right? And people definitely don't want to admit to that fact in front of someone in a position of authority, in front of an attorney or someone who's supposed to be kind of holding everything together, right? So I think there's sometimes a little bit of pressure for witnesses to appear as though they're doing better than they really are, right? But if they don't actually process that, if they don't acknowledge what's coming up for them, then that's going to come out, right? It doesn't just go away from us. We know, right, from so much study and so much research into human behavior, what's going on in our minds doesn't just disappear if we choose to ignore it, right? Or if we can't handle it for whatever reason. It lives, it stays, it's gonna come out somehow, right? So it's better to process it in kind of a structured environment where they can be taken care of and that can work out, right? Than for that to come out in the middle of testimony when they're triggered in some way, when they get asked a question that's a little bit strategically manipulative or a little bit cruel in some way, and it hits a button and they haven't had a chance to process that yet, and it all comes out right in that moment, right?
And it's over. It's not like they have it's not like they have any control of it over it, right? And
No.
then in my experience, unfortunately, the witness usually gets blamed by the
Yes.
attorney or the client. Like, oh,
Yes.
they couldn't maintain their composure. Well, it
Yes.
really wasn't assessed. So let me tell. So I prepped the witness. I trained a witness yesterday,
Mhm.
and I asked the attorney the day before. I'm like, hey, for like, what type of person is this? And they said, well, he's a really nice guy. He's a nice guy. In fact, if anything, like, we need more confidence. He's kind of meek and quiet. He's a nice guy. He's not gonna have any problems, like blow it up or anything like that. It's just like, we have to build him, like, we have to give him more energy. I said, okay, fair enough.
Mhm.
So I sit down yesterday. This is yesterday. And in the first 20, I'm introducing, you got to, first step, we get build rapport. Hey, here's what I do. Here's why I'm here. We go over all this stuff. So we get to like the 20, 30-minute mark. And I asked the question, I said, how is this lawsuit impacting you
Mhm.
emotionally? I said, and here's why I asked that. I do this with every single witness.
Mhm.
As I said, some witnesses come into this room, they're scared shitless.
Mhm.
They're scared to death. Others come in, they're really nervous and anxious about the process. They've never been through it. Other people come in and they're mad. They think this is a bullshit lawsuit. They're fuming.
Mhm.
Go, every single witness has some sort of emotion. Sometimes it's light, sometimes but every witness has it. I go, where are you on this spectrum?
Mhm.
Ava, this guy bursts out in this angry diatribe and just goes on for 15 minutes about how epically pissed off he is.
Mhm.
And just turning red and pounding the table and I didn't do anything wrong. I can't believe and just it all comes out, right? And then we get to the end of that, let him vent it out, which was, by the way, very, very positive, because now
Yeah.
I know, I found it, and now I can do something with it. We'll talk about that later.
Right.
And at the end of kind of like the hour, right? So we let him go on his 20 or 30-minute thing, and he got all worked up. So we got to the hour, like, hey, perfect time for a break. He's like, can I go use go use the restroom, make a phone call, and I'll come back in 15 minutes. Witness leaves. The attorney looks at me and says, what the blank was that? What the F was that? What was that? And I go, well, obviously there's some anger issues with your witness. They're like, that's impossible. I didn't see that. I said, you didn't ask. You didn't ask. They're like, how did I do it? What, because I'm some brilliant clinical psychologist? I asked.
Mhm.
I asked. And I asked in a very special way.
Yes.
I set this up to be non-threatening, right?
Yes.
I said, number one, every witness comes in with some sort of emotion.
You normalized it.
I normalized it. Everybody does. In fact, here are some of the examples I have recently seen and what I've seen over 20 years. I make
Mhm.
it multiple choice. And I'm like, where are you at? And
Mhm.
right now, correct me if I'm wrong. If I would have come in and just kind of left it open-ended and be like, hey, how you feeling? Okay, yeah, we're going through this prep process. How you doing emotionally? What are the odds I'm going to get there?
Probably slim to none.
Yeah,
Right.
because they feel like they're being cross-examined.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is not just I think this whole male-female thing is overrated. Everybody's got emotion, and I don't think
Yes.
men handle it, or we experience it a certain way, but
Absolutely.
we've all got it in this situation.
Absolutely.
And if you ask a woman or a man in a way that says, hey, how you feeling about this? You're gonna hit a wall, right? You're gonna hit a wall. You haven't normalized it. You haven't given the array of options you see. And the
Mhm.
likelihood of them opening up to you, I think, is pretty slim. Can you talk about some of the ways you, first of all, because remember, I had to connect. Remember, this is a stepwise process. I have to gain their trust first.
Mhm.
In the first 2 minutes of the dep, hi, how you do? I'm Bill. I'm the witness consultant. So tell me about your deep, dark
Yeah.
psychological issues related to this case. They're gonna be
Right.
like, screw you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about because you've been very successful with this. And I want to tell you, I've had my clients call me and tell me after your preps, like, oh my God, Ava's amazing because she can connect with the witness like no other. And then we learn so much about the witness's experience through Ava that we could never get there ourselves. How do you personally handle it?
Well, thank you for that, first of all. And yeah, I mean, I think exactly what you said. It's about the connection, right? I'm a stranger. I'm going in there cold, right? And here's this person that I'm trying to ask, like you said, okay, now tell me, your deepest, darkest trauma from this specific situation. Let's go, right? That doesn't work so well. So I definitely spend a decent amount of time, especially at the beginning, normalizing the entire process, right? Sometimes I put myself in the room a lot and I really let the witness know, hey, here's why I'm here and here's why I care about this, right? I give them typically a little bit of a background of myself, right? I tell them, hey, I came from a place where I didn't come from a place where there were lawyers in my family, right? I didn't come from a place where this was all very normal to me, where you're kind of sitting at a table talking with a bunch of people in suits. This is so foreign, right? This is strange. I acknowledge from the get-go how strange that whole world is, which I've worked for lawyers for over 10 years. I love lawyers. I love the legal industry. I love the whole world. And I think a lot of people, including many attorneys who didn't come from that background as well, can appreciate that it is a really specific world, right?
Yeah.
It's a really different, entirely different scenario. Most people only understand about the law from TV, right? We have such a warped, kind of very uber dramatic understanding of what that's like. So people are freaked out going in, right? It's kind of like a hospital setting, right? People are just kind of automatically freaked out already walking in. So I really normalize that. I don't make that seem strange. So I give them the opportunity to say how stressed they are just under the exact scenario that they're in, right? And really acknowledge how odd all of this is and spend a little bit of time just sitting there with them in the discomfort of them being in an unfamiliar scenario with people that they don't know, and yet they're required to sit there and answer every question, right? They're required to be as vulnerable, right, as we need them to be. And that's a lot to ask of anybody, to say, no, you have to sit there and you have to respond affirmatively to everything. You can't give non-responsive answers. You got to say what you're feeling. So to get there into that comfort level takes a little bit of time and a little bit of work, but it's really worth it, because exactly what you said, it's I think sometimes in the witness prep, I've had things where halfway through, if we're doing a few sessions, sometimes the attorneys are like, it's getting worse before it gets better. How come now we're just hearing about all the bad stuff? We're spending too much time talking about all the stressors, not talking about the positive things. That's the normal psychological process of how things go. I would be much more alarmed if we weren't talking about this, if they were closed off about it. We need to actually get this out and process it in order to then get to a place where this isn't at the forefront of their minds.
You brought up something so important that, and by the way, every attorney I work with freaks out, like, because they don't understand the process.
Yeah.
Said it. I'm going to repeat it. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Every single success story we have. See, people think, right? It's like, okay, here's the witness. We've just hired you. We want you to take the witness from here to here.
Right.
No, that's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
The witness is going to go from here to here.
Yes.
To here to here. It's like a stock, right? Look at Tesla's stock. It's not just a straight line. There's some up and down. And it's going to end in the right spot, but you got to have the valleys, because otherwise those valleys will be exposed during the deposition, right?
Right.
Now, we've talked about the inherent stress of a case, but something that's equally as important. We've talked about this before on the podcast. I have put this in a lot of my speeches and CLEs. Again, not getting enough attention. And again, more value that you and I bring, because we know the questions to ask. We know how to find it. Ava, talk about personal issues causing mental and emotional, completely unrelated to the litigation. So we got your litigation stress, right? That's all got to be assessed. We just covered that. But now in the same assessment, I've got to determine, are you going through a divorce? This is all the stuff I see it every week. Divorces, sick children, being a caregiver for a parent or another family member, financial problems, work issues, work stress. I can go on and on and on. Talk to me about, so here's how I do it, right? I do the same thing. So I get through chapter 1, I go, okay, chapter 2, I go, now, a lot of the witnesses I work with have other things going on in their lives that's impeding their ability, to be good witnesses, for example. And I list all those things. And so the second question I ask is, do you have any other things going on in your life that may impede your ability to focus on, preparing for your deposition. And that's where it comes up. And I see witnesses emotionally distraught, or just their gas tanks on empty, because they're dealing with a spouse or a parent that's going through chemotherapy, and no one knows, because no one asked. Can you talk about some of those, how the personal issues, if not asked about and not processed and not dealt with? Well, we're going to end this with kind of what to do. But if you don't assess that, how that can rear its ugly head in deposition or trial testimony.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even what you said, Bill, about just asking the question, right? And they're saying, well, no one asked, right? I think even with the trial team, litigation team, with us involved, the witness hearing us inquire into their life, hearing the ways in which their attorney and their team, their litigation team, is caring for them, like sort of structurally, systemically, in order for them to be able to show up and testify appropriately. I think that's huge. I've had some witness trainings where we've worked with the attorney, and the attorneys have been just incredible, fantastic, and willing to kind of work with the witness when it comes out. Oh, I'm so stressed out, I can't do this deposition because I actually lost my job and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And I've had some attorneys step up and offer to do really kind things for their clients and for the people and the witnesses that they're working with, right? Or even just by talking about it and give them a place to air their concerns, they understand that we care enough to work around whatever the heck's going on in their life, right? Again, they don't really have a choice in the matter a lot of the time. If they're a party to the case, or if they've been subpoenaed to, come in and testify, they gotta be there whether they like it or not, right? So let's, at the very least, try to work with them in their lives. I think that goes so far for establishing the trust, even between the attorney and the witness, or the attorney and the party to the case, the defendant or the plaintiff. It's huge. But a lot of it is absolutely an assessment. It's, again, normalizing, as you said, Bill, right? Saying, I've seen this example, I've seen this example. Here's what someone in your position recently, told me, and those sorts of things, letting them know that that's normal. And then maybe educating the witness as well in the ways in which, just, again, not speaking to them specifically, but from just a broad educational standpoint. Here's some of the ways that outside stressors can affect what's going on internally. Here's some of the ways that, cognitively things can go offline if we don't have our full capacity involved at all times, right? And really let them know from an educational standpoint what can go on, so that they are more willing to even understand what's happening to them, right?
Yeah.
And then willing to work with it, which is pretty key.
So now let's talk about what to do about it.
Yeah.
Now, again, there's a wide array here. Now, we, despite our training in psychology, and this is very important, we don't have patient-provider relationships with the witnesses. We have work product relationship, attorney-client privilege relationships, as we're part of the litigation team and protected by those two things. But it's a consulting relationship. So there are many things I know that we can do. Number one is this kind of basic therapeutic positive talk. Like, hey, it's gonna be okay. I say, listen, and again, I'm gonna pat myself on the back here. But I tell them, I'm like, hey, you're about to go through the best training program on the planet Earth. Okay. And our witnesses do really great. And you're about to go through that. Your insurance company or your boss or your company has invested the time and the money to take care of you. Right. And we've got the bad guys blueprint. We've got their playbook, and you're nervous. We're gonna teach you. You're gonna, again, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. I always tell them, I'm gonna scare you more before you leave, but you're gonna leave here happy at the end of a day or 2 days or whatever the training length is. That I think that's really important to build them up to say, hey, you've got a great team here. Okay.
Yes.
And then get them through the process. But then when they go home, right, they could go back to, having problems. So I teach things that I would teach anybody. And you don't need a patient-provider relationship. Yeah, positive thinking. Hey, it's going to be okay. I've got a great team. Not everything. We Steve and I wrote that paper about the 13 cognitive distortions people have. They catastrophize. Right. It's the end of the world. Well, no, it's not. And here's why. Okay. Right. And you can educate them on that, get them and teach them. We can't go into all this today, but there's ways to teach positive thinking habits.
Absolutely.
And I give them homework to do. Okay, different podcasts. We can take a deep dive into that. Another thing is just breathing exercises, right? You could teach witnesses how to breathe, just like you teach somebody. I teach we don't advertise this a lot. Attorneys call me a lot because they want to reduce their anxiety before they give their opening statement, right? It's okay. Well,
Yes.
here's what you do in the 30 minutes before, and we work with the attorneys. We teach them. Okay, so there's things like that we can do to send them home with some homework. I'm a big believer, because it's scientifically proven, the huge study just came out 2 months ago, that moderate exercise 3 to 5 days a week beat any SSRI or anxiety medication out there in effectiveness. Get moving, people, right? So I get them nutrition, sleep hygiene, all this stuff that we can do enough based on our training to give them the tools and the guidance to do some of these things on their own. And that works 90% of the time. And then if we have additional sessions with them, we can follow up on that and do those types of things. I'm sure you do those same types of things. Highly effective. However, Ava, and you're going through this right now, talk to me about when you detect something as a consultant that this is going to require a patient-provider relationship, something outside of this legal team to help this particular witness.
Yeah, I've had a few of those, and I mean that's something that is very complicated, right? It's very complicated. And that's something that I've even brought up in several sessions with witnesses, where I've brought up things like I've said, hey, is there anyone that you can speak to about this, right? Yeah. Is there any way that, do you have any kind of, have you ever thought about talking to someone? I kind of broach that conversation and suggest that to certain people, because yes, absolutely, a lot of the time we'll see some things where we think, this goes beyond, right, what we can accomplish here, and in order to get this individual to their highest level of well-being, they could use some outside help, like we all can at some points in our lives, right? So I think suggesting that to the individual is something that I've done a few times, right? But I'm right with you, Bill. I'm very much, I come from a bottom-up approach, right, as they say in psychology, which is let's concentrate on the things that seem really basic and obvious, like health and things. I tell, as you do, right, I tell the witnesses, how about, are you getting enough sleep, right? Make sure you eat something with protein before you have to sit up there for 6 to 8 hours and testify, right? Those sorts of things, because the more that our bodies are taken care of, the more oxygen we have to the brains, the more cognitive capacity we have, the better everything kind of works out to be. So starting from that bottom-up approach, those tiny things that we actually can control has an enormous ripple effect down the line as far as what actually comes out of our mouths, right? It's all so connected. But yes, I do see that a lot. And so sometimes with witnesses where the mental health issues are on the higher side of the spectrum, right, we may spend more of our time in the witness training going over things like some really explicit coping skills and working on, hey, how do you experience stress? How do you know when that's happening in the moment? What are you going to do when that starts coming up from you? Things like breathing exercise, things like, I tell people a lot about, kind of releasing that energy in your hands if they're under the table. Just these kind of really basic, small skills that need to be tailored really subjectively to each individual to really match the exact thing that they need so that they can survive and make it through a really stressful situation in the moment.
Yeah, and they may need advanced professional help, and you and I can help detect when that's necessary and when it's not necessary. And you've had this situation recently. I've had it. You have a witness that says, in these discussions, I've had thoughts of hurting myself. Well, okay, now you got duty to warn issues, which, by the way, it's the attorney's duty to warn if there is an issue there. These things do happen, right?
Yes.
And you've got to be ready as the attorney. And I think that's just another way that we can help the legal team with some of these issues. And let's end with this. And I really, really mean this. I know it to be true. And if anybody on this podcast wants to deny it, you're wrong. And I'm happy to debate you on this. The psychological health and functioning has a massive impact on the quality of their testimony and the eventual resolution or outcome of that case. Now, attorneys, particularly defense attorneys, don't go getting your panties in a wad. Going, oh, I'm the attorney. I prep my witnesses. I put a lot of time in prepping my witnesses. Well, if you have underlying psychological issues going on, prep them all you want. In fact, that's the number one call I get. I worked with this guy for 4 days. He still sucks. Yeah. Gee, I wonder why. And then I go in there, and then in a half a day, boom. And the attorney's going, what the hell just happened? I'm like, dude, there are underlying things here that you never even assessed because it's not part of your and again, that's nothing against any attorney, but I do know this is true. In fact, I had somebody contact me. I had a trial attorney contact me the other day saying, hey, I'd really like to set up a meeting with you and talk to you. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I met one with a master's degree in psychology, and then they went to law school.
That's cool.
So they're like, I listened to your podcast and I see this whole process differently than my colleagues. I'm like, I know, right? Yeah. And so defense attorneys and even plaintiffs, I mean, what we do here, we're here to help you because I know many of these bad deaths. I get sent videos. I get hired, unfortunately, right before trials. So do you. Nothing's more frustrating when you haven't worked with this witness and they were deposed a year ago and they send you the videotape of the dep and it's a disaster. It's a disaster. And then my breakdown of that videotape 90% of the time is there was a mental/emotional issue that was not addressed and it ruined the testimony. Now I can fix it before trial, but I can't fix the videotape that they're going to play at trial maybe. And so folks, huge benefits to having somebody on your litigation team that can do this for you and work as a team with you because, hey, what do you want? You want the best testimony possible. You want accurate testimony, you want effective testimony, and you want a witness to come across as professional and confident. Well, a lot of things need to happen on the psychology level to make that happen. That's what we do. And we're going to keep fighting the good fight. So Ava, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Fantastic. We're going to have you back and keep doing this. I know for a fact that you have started a paper on this issue. We're going to develop this issue into a CLE so we can go into law firms. And listen, you're not going to hire us on every case. We get that. But I know that there are several things that we could teach the attorneys as kind of a screening process. And then if you find trouble, pick up the bat phone, right? Put the bat signal out, we can come in. But a lot of things that you're not doing right now that you can do to make things go much better, both for your witnesses and your case. So absolutely. On that note, thank you everybody to our audience for participating in this edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast. I am Dr. Bill Kanasky. We'll see you next time.